When attempting acrylic chain pulls and their close cousin string pulls, I quickly learned that getting them to come out consistently was a challenge. The problem is that they're much closer to traditional painting than acrylic pouring, where they're usually classed. The only difference is that they use a chain instead of a brush. This means they require more careful preparation and, sadly, lots of practice. As these first examples show, I'm far from mastering chain pulls, but I've learned a few tricks that may help other beginners like myself get off to an easier start. First up, canvas prep. I found it tricky to get the amount of paint applied to the canvas just right. It needs to be enough to evenly level it, too little so that the threads of the canvas can be seen, and the chain skips over low spots, creating faint areas. Too thick, and the chain pushes paint ahead of it, creating a thick line along the stem or tail of the pole. This can make a mess out of subsequent pulls in the same area. For the Artist's Loft Ready Mix paints I use, the best thickness was one that fills all of the gaps between the canvas threads to create an even layer when looked at from a glancing angle. There's no hard and fast rule about this because the amount of paint required changes with different types of paint and can only be determined through experimentation and experience. Another hint is to use only tight, flat canvases. Those that are loose and sagging allow paint to flow towards the center, resulting in uneven pulls. The most common chain used is this 1/16 inch diameter ball chain, available in the jewelry making section of craft stores for around $1 a foot. Larger chains like this one cause problems on most home scale projects. They tend to produce coarse, uneven pulls. They might be useful though for large scale work. I found using small squeeze bottles with 1/16 inch diameter nozzles gives good control over depositing paint. Tapering the amount of paint to where the end of the chain will be reduces the amount of paint being pushed forward and prevents the creation of a thick line of residual paint along the tail or stem. Lay the chain starting from the thin end and ending at the thick end, where the chain pull begins. Placing the chain above the line of paint creates a scalloped edge. Here I didn't prep the board with enough paint and the blue skipped over a low spot. Laying the chain in the paint gives the pull a stronger looking edge. Here the board was prepped with a little more paint and the pull came out more even. The amount of paint in the line determines if the pull comes out with well-defined but short lines like this if very little paint is used, or a longer, almost solid wash if more paint is applied. If you like scalloped edges, an alternative to applying paint directly to the canvas is to soak a length of chain in it, lay the soaked chain on the canvas, and pull away. This technique limits the amount of paint being applied, and the wet chain is hard to control, but it can produce some great results. This is a good technique for wiggle pulls like this, where several colors are used at once. Interestingly, the chain holds paint very well. I've done many of these and never had a drip problem. Watch the chain towards the end of the pull, and you'll see a thick line of paint building up in front of it. This is a case where I prepped the board with too much white. How the chain is pulled affects the shape of the pull. Here it's straight down. Here it's to the left. And here's my favorite, starting toward the left, then turning halfway through to the right, and then straight down. I call this the S-pull. Although ball chain seems to be very flexible, over short lengths, such as near the end, it's stiff enough to cause problems. I call them pigtails, where the stiff end of the chain rotates outward, creating a swirl at the end of the pull. This is a minor example, but some can be large enough to create a large blob at the end of the pull. Placing the end of the chain inside the line of paint doesn't prevent the end from swinging around, but does prevent it from pushing paint outward. A problem I've been having is trying to lay down an even, smooth line of paint. In these examples, the first line was made trying to hold the bottle above the canvas like normal. It's hard to keep it level and move it in a straight line. The other lines were made by resting the tip lightly on the canvas, stabilizing it, and making it much easier to draw even lines and control the flow. Naturally, this idea came after I'd filmed all the segments for this video. As the following pulls show, chain pulls can produce a wide range of shapes and patterns depending on how the paint is laid down, how much is used, and how the chain is pulled. They may take a little practice, but can produce stunning results. I've limited this video to chain pulling, but the principles are mostly the same for string pulls. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it helpful in your own chain pulls. If you want to change from the topic, I hope you'll stop by my main website at waynesthisandthat.com, where you'll find over 500 pages covering a wide variety of subjects, and best of all, I don't sell or advertise anything, so you don't have to worry about pop-ups. Thanks for watching.